nitubatangira muno kuhuliriza iraka lya Bunyoro kuruga kuno mu Diaspora hano mu TGN Radio. nitubatangira muno kuhuliriza iraka lya Bunyoro kuruga kuno mu Diaspora hano mu TGN Radio.
Hello, our viewers. You're most welcome and good evening to you, all of you who have tuned in right now. This is iraka lya Bunyoro Diaspora, and it is Caroline Ajuna Kibuka Ateny, the host of this show tonight. Nkomubulira amazina gaitwa ga Bunyoro gabaire marungi muno kanihire nywe na mugabo ine mwachekecha. Hati, just a quick reminder, today the show is going to be presented in more than 2 languages, but it will be specifically in English and Lunyoro, the Lunyoro language spoken by the people from Bunyoro, who are found in the western part of Uganda. With that reminder, I just want to just again to remind our viewers, as I've said, that show is in both in English and Runyoro, and I reserve the right as a host to speak any other language that I feel will benefit other people who are listening to us who may not know Runyoro or English and would wish me to speak another language, just to let you know about that. And with that reminder, I just want to remind all of you, you've seen our advert, and today is going to be again our series of our great hero, Omukama Kabaleega, who we all like. We know what he's done for Bunyoro, and today being this month being a Black History Month, we will also here in the UK, the Bunyoro here in the UK will appreciate him as the hero and the person who is meant to be spoken or talked about during this month. With this series, we they're normally presented by our speaker or Omutalindwa Olukurato lwa Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom. Era onyenda kubamanyisa nti tumuina hanu nawe online, and he's going to be coming out soon to introduce himself, and then we will continue with the show. Omukuru okwi owektinisa Isaac Akiiki webale muno kwikiriza kuija kuba hamna itwe hanu kutuhektinisa itwe hanu abairaka lya Bunyoro Diaspora, the voice of Bunyoro in the diaspora, that is sponsored by Bunyoro Kitara Development Association. Tusemerere muno kandi tusiima byona ebyokutukora nokwikirizaga buli mwezi kuija kutubaho ebike byokutwegesa hali hero waitu Omukama Kabaleega. Tumanyire oyedibize muno ine milimo nyingi eyokwataniza nka speaker w'olukurato lwa Bunyoro, the parliament of Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom baitu gonze ine milimo egyo yona werekereza obwire noija hano every month. We are very privileged and we are so honored to be hosting you every month. Akiiki ninkusaba n'obugambo obwo buke obeho obugambo bw'okugambira aba viewers baitu n'aba listeners baitu, especially those who do not know you, obagambire who you are. I have already said you're the Omutalindwa w'olukurato lwa Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom, but probably you may want to tell them more about yourself. Otyo munakiiki tusemerere muno okurora okusobola kubayo obugambo buke bw'okutugambiraho n'okugambira aba viewers baitu.
Atenyi wabale muno nkomazire kunyanjura kandi wagamba this program eno eri bilingual, tujja kuba ntukolesa Olunyoro n'Olungereza naye nikongera kuba n'Engola. Our audience, because this is a multimedia program, I won't use the word listener or viewers. It is both listener and viewers, so I prefer using the word audience.
Yes.
I'm happy to be with you once again. As you are aware, this is a monthly program. It runs every last Sunday of the month. It is about Kabaleega. It's called Kabaleega series. My name is Isaac Kalembe Viromaiso Akiiki. I am the Omutalindwa, not Okwi. Omutalindwa meaning the speaker of the Rukurato. The Rukurato is the parliament of our kingdom. So I'm the Omutalindwa of the Rukurato of the mighty Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom. Amen. I'm here to talk once again about Kabaleega. Today we are going to talk about the military reforms. If you recall, when the last program, which aired on the 27th of September, which was the third series, we started looking at the reforms that Kabaleega implemented. And in that series, I talked about the pre-Kabaleega situation, what existed in Bunyoro before Kabaleega embarked on these reforms. And we looked at the religious, the social, the administrative. And once again, today we are going to look at the military reforms. Before we proceed, I'd request that we dedicate ourselves to God. Bunyoro, even before the advent of Christianity, we are religious people. We knew and respected God, and we had our traditional prayer. That's the Bunyoro Kitara national prayer. Last time we used it, but it was in Bunyoro. But since then we have translated it into English. So for those of our audience who do not understand the meaning of the national prayer of Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom, last time, today you have the chance courtesy of, allow me to thank Dr. Cindy Evelyn Magara Amot, but that is a doctor now, because she has defended successfully her thesis. She's just making final changes, but she's obviously a doctor. And also there is another doctor who is Reverend Father Emmanuel Rubega Amot. Those have helped me, who have worked, the three of us, to translate this prayer from Bunyoro to English. So allow me to be the pastor or the preacher, okay,
pastor or
the
priest,
religious leader of this evening.
okay.
Okay, here we go. Esara ihanga Bunyoro kitara. Ai nyamuhango wiguru lyera. Atu akasana akotwa abaingi. Ayahangira iguru n'ensi ebitagira nyomyo. Ayahangira abantu n'ebisoro, ebimera, ebinyonyi n'ebihuka, ensozi n'ebihanga, enyanja n'ebisaaru. Nyamuhanga omuraramirwa, omutegeru engaro nitaswara. Nitukusiima habwa byona ebirungi otuha, omusana n'enjura, ebyokulya hamu n'oruzaaro. Ai kagaba rugabira bona, otugabire itungo nyabahangwa, kazoba kahangi, nitukusaba otukuliza abana baitu n'entege igorokokere. Ai rukirabona, nitukusaba ohungukire kabohaboha yabali mwoyo, kandi ohigike emihingo omu businde bw'endwara n'orufu, ebidande n'ebijambuuka, ebigasayigasa, amagege, n'ebinyamangagana, orufu n'endwara, amahembe hamu n'ebifaaru. Otukwinjirize tuyeke enjara, omuyaga, orubaale, ihunga, okusandara kwa maizi, emisisa, n'enyamaisoka ly'abantu. Ai ruhango weriso likoto, nitukusaba otusense emigisa yawe, kandi otuha obwomezi nuko tuomere nkoburo enkole ihukurwa. Itwena mtugarukemu nikikahabuke.
Nikihabuke.
Ekikumanyisa amina.
Amina.
Omurujungu briefly. This is our traditional Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom national prayer. O God of heaven, who bestows sunshine enjoyed by everyone, creator of peerless heaven and earth, creator of human beings and animals, vegetation, birds and insects, mountains and valleys, rivers and seas. Grand Almighty, our omni-provider, we thank you for your providence, sunshine and rain, food and fecundity that you give us. O giver, who provides to everyone, grant us genuine wealth, God the universal Son. We entreat you to protect and engender our children with good health. Almighty God, we implore you to destroy machinations of the diabolic. We beseech you to block the path of disease and death, and all sorts of witchcraft, sorcery, and demons. Protect us from famine, destructive winds, hailstorms, waves, floods, earthquakes, and man-eating wild animals. God of plenty, shower blessings upon us, give us good health and longevity, like millet grain and like legumes that go bad so easily. Amen.
Amen.
So that is our traditional Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom prayer. So with that, we have dedicated ourselves to God. We can now start our topic for tonight, which is Kabaleega's military reforms.
Yeah.
Like we did last time, I'm going to give the pre-situation, the Kabaleega military situation in the Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom. Before Kabaleega came to power, before he succeeded his father in 1870, the army of Bunyoro Kitara, there was no standing army. There was a civilian army, an irregular army, which was called Owek, meaning that whenever there was need for an emergency, say the kingdom has been attacked, the territorial chiefs or rulers, that is our Masaza, those were the Saza chiefs, would be able to mobilize their people, the people in their territory, to go and fight This had many disadvantages. First of all, these were civilians. They had no military training, and they were just called at short notice. And in most cases, they lost the battle and the war. So that was how Bunyoro Kitara military situation stood before 1870. And remember, since the Southern chiefs or the territorial chiefs were the ones in control of these armies, that means they could use the army the way they wanted. And the king, because he trusted them, he trusted the Southern chiefs, he was just the commander-in-chief of this Wesenze, that's the irregular army, the militia army. And he depended on the goodwill and the trust of the Southern chiefs. Many Southern chiefs really rebelled using the military forces at their command and declared themselves independent of the center. A good example is what Kaboyo, who was a prince, did during his father's reign, that is Nyamtukura, Omukama Nyamtukura, when he rebelled and he declared Toro an independent kingdom in 1830. That was 40 years before Kabaleega came to power. Of course, there were others. They went on asserting their independence, becoming rebellious, and that's the situation that Kabaleega inherited. However, his father Kamrasi had done something to start creating a national army. So Kabaleega did not start from zero, from the ground. There was already something in place which Omukama Kamrasi's father had put in place, but Kabaleega built on it.
Yes.
So what did Kabaleega do? Kabaleega created a standing army of 150,000 men. He called it Abarusura, from the Kinyoro word, verb, kurusura, to tear apart. Those of you who have ever seen a carnivorous animal like a lion or a leopard eating its prey, that's what is called tearing apart. You tear with force the flesh. So the Barusura, this was a symbolic name, meaning that these were fearless people who are going to fight and defend the kingdom at all costs. So that's the name that Kabaleega gave to his army. It was a professional army equipped with guns, unlike the Wesenze, which was equipped mainly with spears and shields. So for him, he got guns for his soldiers and a strong army of 150,000 standing army. Secondly, he put the army under his direct command. Unlike in the past, where the army, which was divided, and each army was answerable to the Southern chief or the territorial chief. For him, he put it directly under his command. He divided the army into 12 regiments called Ebitongole. These we may call divisions or battalions. And each Kitongole, that is the singular, plural is Ebitongole. Each Kitongole comprised 15,000 men.
Wow.
Kabaleega abolished the old Wesenze, that was the levy en masse, which was the army of the county chiefs, which had relied on hasty recruitment of the army at short notice in terms of emergency. He dismissed or transferred all the army generals except 3. Remember when Kabaleega was declared heir, was announced heir upon the death of his father, there was a lot of uproar and protest, basically from the Babito, that's the royal family, because for them they had wanted his brother, Kabumindi. But according to his father's will, it was Kabaleega to be king. So they totally opposed him. There was also opposition from the aristocrats. Those were the Bahuma. And also there was opposition from the territorial rulers, the Southern chiefs. Remember at that time, most of the Southern chiefs, if not all, were Babito. They were from the ruling class. There were no commoners, no aristocrats who were provincial chiefs. They were either sons of the king, his brothers, uncles, things like that. But for Kabaleega, he met this resistance. But there were 3 army commanders from Kambras's army who stood by him. These were Nyakatura, Nyakamatura, Ireta Byangombe, and Chikukule Runego. Ireta Byangombe, by the way, was a Munyankore military officer who had been sent by the Omugabe Wankole to help Kabigumire. When Kabigumire was defeated, Ireta surrendered, and Kabaleega said, this guy is very good. We are not going to kill him. We are not going to use him as one of our commanders. So Ireta Byangombe has an interesting history. Nyakamatura, of course, was a brave man who had exhibited his bravery during Kambras's time, and Kambras had already taken him on as one of his formidable commanders. So, and the Runego, Kikokule Runego, this was the commander of Bugangais, Buyaga and Bugangais. He controlled that trade route, and he put up a stiff resistance when the British invaded Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom. So those three had supported him during the War of Secession. He never dismissed them, he retained them. But the rest, he dismissed those armed officers, mainly who were Babito.
Wow.
So by maintaining the three, he was rewarding them for standing with him during this war of secession of 1869 to 1871. What were the aims of Kabaleega's creation of the army? Kabaleega's aim of creating a standing army were threefold. In other words, there were three factors, three reasons why Kabaleega created a standing army. The first one was that he wanted to build an army that was independent of the influence of the Saza or Kaunte chiefs and members of the royal family. He wanted, in other words, he wanted to alienate the army from the political influence. Only answerable to himself, not the Saza chiefs, not the Babito or members of the ruling family. That was the first reason. So, whose loyalty suspect on account of their earlier show of preference to his rival Kabigumire in the War of Secession, and that is the reason. Right? Because these former commanders had allied with Kabigumire, so he no longer trusted them, except these three. So he wanted the army to be independent of political influence, political and the palace influence. Two, he wanted to curb the power of the aristocracy.
Yes.
Who had opposed him, and some of them still supported a royal prince in Ethiopia called Ruyonga. Ruyonga was the claimant, one of the claimants to the throne, as we shall see soon. And he said these Babito army commanders still had allegiance to Ruyonga, who was a claimant to the throne, much as he had defeated Kabigumire. So that was the second reason. And the third reason was he wanted to create a loyal army needed to defend the country against invasion, mainly from Uganda and for the use of the expansion of Bunyoro. The greatest enemy of Bunyoro at the time of Kabaleega and before was Uganda. Buganda had taken advantage of the weaknesses in the Bunyoro political structure, especially during the reign of old men who ruled senility to the age of senility around 80 and 90, like Nyamutukura, those people who could not assert their influence. So Uganda went on creeping, taking Bunyoro land. Remember, the original boundary between Bunyoro and Uganda was Rubigi here at the northern bypass. Yeah. But Uganda went on expanding. As you might be aware, Uganda only had 3 counties originally. Those were Busiro, Mawokota, and Chadon. But they went on encroaching Bunyoro, taking much of our land from Wiru, that's Masaka, Vudu, all those places were taken, and then they encroached directly to Bunyoro. As we shall see today, we are going to look at one of the battles, the most defining battles in the relationship of Bunyoro and Uganda. So until they reached River Mayanja, even they crossed it, they reached as far as the River Kafo, where the Buganda chief of the area was called Kangaho. Kangaho, that means stop there.
Stop there, yeah.
But for him, he never stopped there. He even
Continued.
invaded, they would invade Bunyoro, proper Bunyoro, as we shall see. So he wanted to put an end to the threats posed to Bunyoro by Uganda. And of course, other areas, like there were the whites coming in, with the Baker, Samuel Baker, Gordon, and others. So these soldiers were unpaid and lawless, and the aristocracy suffered from having their land and their homes plundered at will. He allowed the army, because these armies were not paid, his army was not paid. So as a way of checking the power of the aristocracy and the provincial chiefs, he allowed them to go and plunder the wealth and the land of these aristocrats and the rulers. Equally important, he was in a position to transfer every commander from one post to another, which was not the case before. In the time of Kamrasi and the previous kings, once you were appointed a commander, you are going to be a commander for life in that area. So they created the centers of influence. But Kabaleega changed all this. He had the power and will to transfer you at his will.
Wow.
Therefore, the command of the army was no longer, as in the past, a sort of territorial fiefdom. The generals, the army commanders, too, were no longer necessarily the most important and able rulers. You are just a commander, you are a servant of the king, you have to obey the king, his orders. If he calls you, you have to go. If he transfers you, you don't have to resist it, which was not the case before. Commoners and foreigners who were appointed and promoted and merited by the king replaced the local aristocracy as the military leaders. This was a revolution. Previously, all the Bavito were commanders, but now Kabaleega has appointed commoners and foreigners, especially the Langias we shall see. People like Byangombe, I have already mentioned him, who was a Myankole, who rose through the ranks to become a senior military officer up to the end of Kabaleega's rule. Kabaleega, the army was recruited from adventurers from all parts of Uganda. Bunyoro, by the way, is not a tribe. I have been trying to correct this. We Bunyoro, we are not a tribe. We are a nation. Bunyoro are found everywhere, even in UK. I'm not talking about you who are in the diaspora looking for care. I'm talking of the real Bunyoro. I have already talked about Prince, Reverend Prince Kabaleega's son, who was taken to UK, studied there right from primary, and went to study law at Oxford and the Cambridge universities. We are still investigating about him, researching about him, and we shall return to him. Of course, there were other areas. But here locally, in the Great Lakes region, the Interlacustrine region, Bunyoro were found all over. In fact, the real boundary that I've been telling our audience was Ituri Forest in the center of DRC, the whole of eastern DRC, Mboga, Bulega, northern Uganda, the whole of northern Uganda, up to central Kenya. All there you are going to find there Bunyoro. Tabora, northern Tanzania, that was Bunyoro. So Bunyoro is a nation, not a tribe. We always oppose the branding us as a tribe. So Kabaleega would recruit commanders and soldiers from all those parts of the country. It was not only here in Bunyoro or Uganda. Yes. So most of the professional soldiers in the army were Vairu, the lower class who were the majority in the kingdom. Remember, there were three classes in Bunyoro: the Bavito, who were the rulers, we had the aristocrat who were the Roma, and then at the lower rank, who were the Vairu, who were the majority. So most of the professional soldiers in Kabaleega's army were Vairu, unlike in the past, where the aristocrats dominated the army.
Amazing. So he was quite a unique man.
Even the army commander, the army commander was Emuiru Ruabudongo. He was a commoner. The army commander, the commander of the 150,000 strong army was commanded by Ruabudongo. Kabaleega was the commander-in-chief. Military command and territorial rulership, in short, had become separable. So there was nothing like, I come from Hoima, I come from Masindi, I come from Bugangaizi, I'm going to be commander of this. No, it had become, Kabaleega separated it. Kabaleega divided the army, as I have said, in 15 regiments or divisions. The division commanders were appointed by Kabaleega and were required to maintain residence at the capital where they could be supervised and consulted. Each commander would come and stay at the palace at Imparo and be consulted or advised. And if he had erred, he would be punished or even dismissed, as we shall see when we come to the real operation of the army.
Wow.
These leaders appointed their own officers, subject to royal approval, who commanded the regiments in the provinces. An army commander, the head of a division, would appoint his officers, but these officers whom he has appointed would be subject to approval by the king. If you say, I have appointed Isaac as the commander of this battalion in my division, he would have to be vetted by Kabaleega and his advisors. So you can see that.
So we are talking about the structure
of influence.
Omutalindwa, are we talking about the structure? Yes. Okay. The structure of the Abarusura.
Abarusura, yes. Each regiment was entrusted with a particular area. They were occasionally transferred, presumably to prevent the development of regional concentrations of power. The most powerful regiments were stationed near the capital to protect the king and to act as a reserve army that could reinforce other regiments being attacked in the borderland. What do I mean by transferring divisions? If you say this maybe I could say this Simba battalion, which is based in Mbarara, I'm using the national, would be transferred. The Simba battalion, you are going to move away from Mbarara up to Karamoja. You say, no, for us, Simba battalion, we are based in Mbarara. The order has come from the king, you have to move, and then you take there another division. That's what I'm referring to. And the regiments had land allotted to them where the soldiers lived with their slaves. It seems that in the case of local men, at least, wives remained in their village homes. So if you are a soldier from Hoima, you are in a battalion that is in Kiaka or Toro, you leave your wife and family in Hoima, you go and work there, as is the case with modern armies. Within Bunyoro, the new regiments were intended to enable the royal government to achieve closer control over all sections of the population. These regiments, which were based in Bugahia, in Hoima, where the palace was, were used basically as a reserve army, but also to control every section of the population. Should there be people who are opposed to the king, who want to create rebellion, the army, this division would crush them. In effect, the Barusura were employed as both in an internal security service and a remarkable successful agent of conquest. So let's look at the 15 divisions that I've talked about.
Yes.
These are the 15 divisions. I'm still trying to find out the meaning of each division. The first division was called the Kidoka, which was commanded by Kiamuhangire Ruhimbia, who was the son of Majara. I'm trying to find out the meaning of the word Kidoka, but maybe it was a regiment color. Ekihukia in Bunyoro Toro means purple. So maybe this was their battalion color. The division color of this division was purple. Maybe they wore a purple ribbon somewhere. That's why they were called Ekihukia. This was under Rusongoza, who was the son of Yantara. Later on, it came under the command of Muhenda Ruhanika, who was the son of Komugigo. Here you can see Kabaleega dismissed the original command of this division, Yantara, and appointed a new one. There was Ekpropio. This was the third division. It was led by Kajura of the Badoli clan. He was killed during the war with the Baganda known as the Benga War.
Wow.
The Kigwera, I think Kugwera is to pounce on someone or something. So you could see that this division was trained to pounce on the enemy. So Ekigwera was under Kabagambe, who was the son of Ireta. This battalion was entrusted with the defense of Usoga, Bukidi, and Buganda. Eastern Uganda, you can see, this was the division which was stationed there, which would go and monitor the station.
So, Omutalindwa, sorry,
Bukidi,
just to cut you short, these battalions that you're telling us, or divisions, were they having specific function? Like, for example, Orugui, did you say the one that was for the purple one? I think you said.
I think the purple was just the battalion ribbon.
Yeah.
You know, each in military formation, each battalion or division has got a specific color that they wear to be recognized.
So did they have specific functions to do to fight for? For example, if someone is fighting Bunyoro from the western, he would send a particular battalion to go and fight them, or it never used to have a specific.
It would be stationed there in that region.
Okay.
But it is only this division or battalion which was stationed in Bugaya, in Hoima, near the palace,
yes,
which had a dual function, okay, acting as a reserve army just to assist the territorial division, should they be attacked, or act as a spies and contain the local population.
Fine, cool.
And the fourth one, that's the fifth one,
yeah,
was called Ekikabya. Is it Kukabya? Is what does it?
That sounds Kiganda name. Yes, Kukabya.
Kiganda name. I don't know, but I'm trying to find out the meaning of each one. But this one was under Rukara, who was the son of Kabaseki.
Oh.
Then we had Ekihambya. Ekihambya, Kuhambya is chase. I think that's the meaning. These were the password. They would pursue the enemy wherever they would be. That's the impression I have. I'm not so sure, but from the name, that's the impression I get. So Ekihambya was under Wabudongo, who was the son of Yonasan Wamara. Wabudongo also was the treasurer of the kingdom. He was the minister for finance, both as the commander of this division, but also the one who kept the monies, the material wealth, the tasks, the ivory, everything for the kingdom.
So he was a trusted man.
He was brother, a very trusted man. You remember, he was one of the three commanders from Kamras who sided with Kabaleega and were awarded.
Yeah.
Those people who come from Masindi, you might be knowing about Akio Kamese, the late Akio Kamese. He was his brother. They were brothers.
Wow.
He was the brother of Kamese, Akio Kamese. Then the next one was called Ekivanja. At first, this battalion was under the command of Katarikabo, who was the son of Yam. When he was discharged from the army, maybe out of old age or infirmity, Ruansambia succeeded him. The next division was called Ekirwana, to fight, the one who fights. So this was always in the fighting mood, raring to go.
Ready to go fight.
The mood of fighting, they were ever ready. This was charged with the defense of Congo. So it was in the west, in Bunyoro, Ituri Forest region, Boga. That was the division. It was called the Kiwana. It was charged with the defense of Congo, and most likely it was the one that Stanley encountered when he was coming to rescue Emini Pasha, because he traveled from the west coast through the Congo. But as soon as he got out of the forest, he encountered the Barusura. Most likely, these were the people whom he encountered. It was under the Southern chief Ireta, son of Yangombe. I talked already about Ireta Yangombe. This was the guy who came from, who had been sent by Omugabo Bankole to assist Kabigumire, but when Kabigumire was defeated,
he stayed on.
Then Kabaleega took him on as second. Then we had another one, Kibanja. The Kibanja. I don't know what Kibanja Does it mean that a piece of land or the one who goes to ask for debts
oba nibo balwaniriraga
loans?
ebibanja by'abantu
Maybe.
eitaka nibo
This
balwaniriraga
was under
eitaka
Kikukule. Yes. So this was under Kikukule Rwangombe, I already talked about. That was in Bugangaizi. He was the son of Runego. It was charged with the defense of the border between Uganda and Bugangaizi. He also had his own county army. We shall talk about later, Kikukule, because when he was captured, because of what he did the British, when he was captured, he was taken to Uganda and sentenced to life imprisonment. He died in prison. I'm told up to now, the grave where he was buried has a fence around it, and nobody knows where it is. So that he will be released. His skeleton will be released after 1,000 years. I'm told, someone was telling me, one of his relatives, that he was sentenced to a life sentence of 1,000 years. So that needs to be investigated. The next one was called Ekivale. I think this is stone. They were as heavy as the stone may be, crushing the enemy. This was under Nyakamatura, who was the son of Nyakatura. The division was stationed in Hoima, which was in the heart of Bunyoro. So this is the one I think which Kabaleega used to act as spies, to quell internal rebellion, and to act as a reserve. The next one was called Ekitalia. Something that doesn't eat, I don't know. Maybe for them they would not mind about food, or they had that mentality of fighting, whether there is food or there are reserves or not. For them they would go on and fight. So this was under Kasage, most likely,
I know,
who was the son of Rujimoza. It was charged with the defense of Mwenge. And the third last, there was Ikikweya, which was under Rwamukika, but he was taken away from him. It was taken away from him and given to Kiza, the son of Iteka, his chief. Second last was Ekihangura. Is it to remove the handle from the hole? Is it to the feet? Maybe it would have been the proper
okuhangura ekintu okakiihamu.
Okuhangura is Luganda. Okuhangura is Luganda, that's to the feet. I don't know, maybe it was Bunyoro word which was
translated,
taken up by the Baganda, but that's the meaning of this division, the Tangura, and this one was commanded by Dona Kabajueka. Dona Kabajueka was the father of Martin Mukidi, who was once a prime minister during the reign of Omukama Sato Winnie, the father of the current king. And Dona Kabajueka was the grandfather of Father Peter Isingo Mamot, who is currently at in Hoima, and also the grandfather of Bishop Albert Vaharagate Akiiki, Bishop Emeritus Albert Vaharagate Akiiki, who comes from Masindi, but currently at Fatoma Parish in Nankulaje, Kampala. So these are his grandchildren. We shall talk about him later when we are talking about the war against the British. He did a great job. He was sent back from Lango to come and fight the British and the Baganda, which he did, killing very many Baganda, but was finally captured and taken prisoner of war, but he was later released. Lastly, there was Ekitikia. This was first under Kibego, the son of Muchokoro. Later it was given to Bikanga Kabuzi, the son of Nyamugobwa. So those were the 15 divisions of the standing army. I need to point out that Kabaleega, much as the standing army, the Obwesenze or provincial county armies, still he left them intact. You never know, because these armies could be ambushed, and the county chief could mobilize fighters. So the provincial armies also existed. So these were the minor army divisions which belonged to the Southern chiefs and generals of Avarosura. Prominent among them were Ekitanda, which belonged to Abudongo, it was led by a Muganda called Chwa. There was also a Kitasa, which also belonged to Abudongo. It was led by Nigeria, son of Kumale. There was a Chorosa, also belonged to Abudongo. It was led by Musoga called Mika Fataki. Mika Fataki, we shall read about him. He was a Musoga who settled in Hoima, that's around Mateka Algonda's place. I think the current
Buhaguzi County.
The current general, what's the name? Buhaguzi County.
Yes.
The current general, what's the name? He's in the EPDF, one of the senior officers. He's related to this Fataki. I think he was his grandchild. He's in the EPDF.
So basically, so we just
then
want Omutalindwa. So we just go back to that relationship. Yes, the other week we had the relationship of Busoga and Bunyoro. So basically today you're confirming to us that actually the relationship started right from way back in Kabaleega's time, because there was even a Musoga chief.
It was before.
So as you said, Bunyoro is a nation. So
yes, Bunyoro is a nation, and Musoga was part of Bunyoro. If you go back to the history of the Bavito, the first Movito king of Musoga was Kiza, who, when he crossed River Nile at Kamuli from Masindi Port, he became Nyamutukura, Omukama Nyamutukura. That was the first Mukama of Musoga. And he went with 11 Bavito families, which created the current 11 Bavito chiefdoms, where the Kabazinga is appointed. So those were Bavito families, and they are currently prominent Basoga. And for information, when a prominent Musoga dies, including the Kabazinga, they are buried facing the Bunyoro, indicating that we are going back where we came from.
Amazing.
So that relationship preceded the Kabaleega's time. And in fact, during Kabaleega's time, they sent one of the princes for tutorship. So when the British attacked him, there was a prince whom Kabaleega was teaching the science and the science and arts of administration in order to go back and become Kabazinga. But when he went there, the British realized that he had been in Bunyoro. They reported him and appointed another Kabazinga.
Okay. All right. Amazing. That is a good relationship that most of us have got to remember all the time, and know that Bunyoro actually goes across the world. And you've already said there are some Bunyoros, maybe, I don't know, not us here, but others who are across the globe. And you've told us Bunyoro is a nation. It's important for us as Bunyoros to keep remembering that.
Not a tribe.
Not a tribe. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we continue with the divisions and the battalions of the Kabaleega's army.
That's the standing army. That's the regular army. The Barusura were the regular army.
Wow.
There were other divisions in the army, like whom we may call the CMI, Chieftains of Military Intelligence currently. So these were called the Babogora.
Oh, sorry. So are we still on the structure? We are still on the structure. You were concluding on the structure, yeah.
The first structure I've been talking about is the regular army. But apart from the regular army, they were the intelligence section of the Barusura. That's the one I'm talking about. The spies, those who could gather military intelligence for the king, for the standing army, for the king to operate on. For instance, who would tell the army that Uganda was preparing to attack? So these were the Babogora, who were the intelligence officers of the kingdom. They were part of the Barusura, but their work was to get intelligence information. They were state police and executioners. Just in case there is someone who has been, for instance, accused of treason, who would kill him? Not the regular army. It would be killed by the Babogora. Remember last time when I talked about the 15 mighty men, there was one who was the chief executioner. Yes. So I think most likely he was the head of this section of the Barusura. For them, they would kill or reprimand or sentence or imprison anyone who committed serious and minor crimes, like ignoring court etiquette. You go and talk to the king directly, that's not allowed. Maybe if you don't observe what should be done in the palace, for instance, you'd be dealt with. And they would also mobilize morale boosters. They would sing songs to boost the morale of the army, and also to warn the population of the dangers of opposing Kabaleega. One of the songs went like this, that a rebel is worth killing. That was one of the popular songs sung by these Babogora. So this was made that there is no room for rebellion in the Bunyoro Kitara kingdom.
Wow.
So these were deployed in villages to apprehend wrongdoers. So that is the Babogora. And of course, the other section, the third section was the Royal Marine. Kabaleega had a royal army, a navy, the Marines. It was only the land forces.
Who were on water, yeah. On Lake Albert.
Yes, or who were on water. Yeah. So Kabaleega also had the Royal Navy headquartered in Bururi, not on Lake Mitanzige in the west, because Lake Albert, which owned Mitanzige, was in the center of the kingdom. Remember, there was this battalion which was in the Congo border. So there was no threat coming from Lake Albert. So this one was headquartered in Bururi, that's in Nyakasongora, which the Baganda is pronounced as Nyakasongora, that's where, Bunyara Bururi. It was commanded by Admiral Rubanga Wakyagwire. This was an admiral, the commander of the Marine Kabaleega's navy at Bururi. He was in charge of Kabaleega's boats on Lake Kyoga and River Nile. River Nile in Bunyoro is called Kihira. Nile is just a creation of the British. In addition, Nyamuyonjo, who was the traditional hereditary chief of Bunyara, that's in Bugerere, was responsible for the Omukama's canals on River Nile and Sezibwa. This river Sezibwa here was part of Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom, and Nyamuyonjo was the one in charge. For those of you who have read about writing the book of John Hannington, Captain John Hannington speak, I think it's called The Journal of the Source of the Discovery of the Source of the Nile. Yeah. I downloaded a copy, I downloaded a soft copy of that book last week. He wrote it in 1859. Might have read about this incident where Nyamuyonjo refused to allow Speak to use Bunyoro's boats to travel northward into Kitara until he received the clearance from the Omukama. When Speak came from the south, from Buganda, so he wanted to go and meet Omukama Kamras. By the way, Omukama Kamras at the time was at his palace in Masindi, Kirandongo. But Nyamuyonjo refused. He said, I have to get authorization from the Omukama to allow you. So this was the commander. He was the admiral during Kamras' time, and Kabaleega returned him.
Yes.
And I'm told the relics of Kabaleega's boats are still there, even in Kamuli and even here in Bugerere.
Wow.
So until he was allowed, it was clear, that's when he traveled. Furthermore, Kabaleega had a marine division at Kazinga Channel in Kasese, that's in Nyaruguru. It was entrusted with forays into Rwanda. Kabaleega, upon coming to power, the second expedition, after conquering Toro in 1876, as we shall see, he traveled all the way to Rwanda and made them his subject. They agreed to pay tribute. He traveled through the Kazinga Channel using that boat. And the Omukama Satcho Winnie, I think in 1840s, 1843, he visited that site and found there the relic of that boat. So this was the work of the Royal Marine in that area. So he used those boats to make him travel to Rwanda, Ankole, and other various states in the south. Most of all, it controlled the markets in southern Bunyoro, especially the cattle salt mine. So basically,
that's the structure.
That was
the structure of.
That's the structure. Maybe I should point out that in the army, Kabaleega depended mainly on 16 clans. You know, in the Bunyoro Kingdom, each clan has got a function. But during the reign of Kabaleega, he identified 16 clans on matters of the military. These are one, the Babito. Much as they had supported Kabaleega and he tried to be independent, to break away from the kingdom in the previous years, Kabaleega did maintain many Babito as commanders. Two, Bahamba.
The Bahamba, my mothers. Bahambas are my mothers, yes.
The
Bachati, yeah.
The Vaziraija, Abahiakwa, Abagorongwa, Abalebeki, Abapasisi, Abanywagi, Abagaya, Abavoro, Abatabi, Abakwonga, Ababuitirwa, Abajagara, and Abagomba.
Wow.
Note this. In 1893, Kabaleega instructed the Rukurato, I don't know who was the Omutalindwa at the time, because from I've just come. 1893, instructed the Rukurato to remove one clan from the list of clans in the north.
Wow.
That clan was called Abaziraija. Why? He told the Rukurato, that this clan was plotting to overthrow him because they had a lot of contact with the Indians and the Baganda. That was the ostensible reason, the professed reason he gave them.
Yes.
But what he intended to do was to expel them from Bunyoro, and he gave them land in Kiaka. Kiaka is in Kenjojo. He settled them there secretly, and they infiltrated the armies of his enemies, the armies of Toro and the armies of Uganda. They claimed to be not to be Bunyoro, to be Baganda, to be Batoro, and they started recruiting Bunyoro into the armies of Toro, into the armies of Uganda, who would act as spies. And these people played a significant role when the British and the Baganda attacked. The Baganda army had been heavily infiltrated by the Bunyoro. Most of the soldiers in the Baganda army were Bunyoro, and they would give out a lot of intelligence information. They would alert Kabaleega, going to attack, in fact, they were planning. Until Colonel Colville got to learn of it, he was suspicious of it. When the real fighting started, especially when Kabaleega had moved to Lango, he told Kakumbu that, you know what, the army had been infiltrated. He demobilized them. He said, you know what, we are going to rest at Mubende for 2 months. And he went and recruited Somalis, Nubians, the Singis, those were the Indians.
I'm sorry, Omutalindwa, we are running out of time. We will have to go for break. You have told us how many clans so far. Can you just finish the clans that were...
16 clans, I have mentioned them already.
Okay. So
currently there are 171 clans, but he picked 16 clans to deal with, to rely on for recruitment, for military intelligence during this reign.
Amazing. So
maybe I could repeat them when we come from the break.
Yeah, amazing. That is a very good history about the reforms, military reforms, the aim and objectives of these reforms, and the organization of the army and the structure of Kabaleega's army. As you've already heard, all these things, what Kabaleega has done, Omukama Kabaleega has done quite a lot of things, and with what Omutalindwa has just discussed, we are going to go off for a short break, and I'm just going to borrow a song from our sister kingdom. You've already known Bunyoro extended up to Toro. I'm sure they will not mind for us to play this song. And once we come back from the break, Omutalindwa will just repeat those clans so that people get to know the clans that Omukama or Kabaleega used to work with directly. Abanyoro n'abanyoro kati n'aba friends of Bunyoro, please, we are going off for a kuhumura or a break. Then we'll be returning with the second part of the show. Muhumure kurungi nitujja kuba ntugaruka then. Bye.
Qualify. bana bayicukuru ekibalisanga honensi ekatimanyi ndayawe kigambo kanyenyigira mu kirale ekyokuzina ninyirica abantu munuka okombeka ekirale nino okunira nti bundi bantaroho kigambo balikinyejukiraho kandi batabani wa kijuma omukika kyere nadikawa bana banyamwenge kaswa abasita bambale ekirale kyawe kiraha omuntu ekirale binazibubi
muhuliriza iraka lya Bunyoro kuruga mu Diaspora on TGM Radio.
Hello, our viewers and our listeners. Baito banko Omutalindwa nkabagambirege audience yaitu mwebaleyo hakuhumura eki ekizina kya Moses Arali or from our sister Kingdom Toro kibaini kibaza hakirale. That is, I think I understand that is legacy. Hati nko tumanyire bagamba abantu gambira abahansi n'abaheguru ni muhura ekirale ky'Abanyoro. We have to do something about our legacy. Abakama baitu bakubagamba abazinire abakuru baitu abakulidinga Omutalindwa waitu nawe ngugo nabo baini bamubaza ni mukizine ekyo. It is a very beautiful song that we have to all listen to and make sure that we work hard to leave something that will make our legacy continue, as we are talking about Omukama Kabaleega. Obutakubaida akozere ebyo byona twakubaita kumubazaho hati na actually twakwali na show eno hati abokuba yakwali tutaine kitu kumubazaho nabwe ekizine kyo kibaire kirungi muno ayebale muno arali kuterera akazina ako nitujja kuba ntumusimaga buli kiro. Hati tutakagenzire back to our questions. I just want to appreciate some of our viewers who have tuned in, or our audience. Atenyi Kabanyoro, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Morini kunihira bojo webale nayo kutuninga in olinka, you are in the right place. Once Bunyoro land, okay, that is amazing. Some Kakembo Kitone Arali, you're also here with us in the studio. Thank you so much for all the support you're giving in the chat and answering all the different questions that you can answer, and for those that you are unable to answer, Omutalindwa ajja kuba nagarukayo mu chat nagarukamu ebikaguzo byona aba viewers baitu n'aba audience yaitu oba ebakaguza. We need Diana Kemirembe is saying we need our land. At the same time, Diana wants Omutalindwa olukurato lwa Bunyoro kitara kubazaho to enlight a little bit about the Bugoma forest. Abokuba ekintu ekyo kiralikirize forest ege iralikirize munabanyoro tibakiyabyama abokuba forest nkobutwena nkobutumanyire ebikugifwaho. Kugonza Rakasaija nawe ngunu nawe roho agarukamu arali kitone. Kandole hani some questions that I will pass over to the Omutalindwa, quietly and straightforward questions that I can read, so that I don't miss out people's questions and say them badly and say the names wrongly, and then people get angry. So I have got to be very careful with what I'm saying right now. Hateki ebintu bino bumpika ha chat hano obuzuni bunyizira bwingi muno. It is winning. I don't know what Diana Kemirembe is talking about, but she says something is winning, and we are glad that something is winning. Ronadi via Rugaba, webale muno kutuninga ini. Thanks, moderator and our great speaker, Bunyoro Kitara. I'm watching live through traveling from Jinja to Kamuli to Pick in Law, who has been referred. Oh dear, sorry, Akiiki. Tukusabira orabe omuhanda nabikyo byona kandi no murwaira aleke kurungi where the person is supposed to be going. Just Omutalindwa nganyire nkusere some questions that people want you to address. Proud Munyoro from but ebyo kinde mene njja kinyubaza bokuba abantu bajja kunjuma tinkubaza clan zabu kurungi. Hati Omutalindwa, Edward Nyakana, and thank you so much for tuning in from all the way from Belgium. We are very excited to have you on the show. Yasin Mugisa, live learning. Thank you so much for appreciating. Edward Nyakana, what are you still here with us? I know Morina Linda, Chairperson White of Bunyoro Development Association. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And as you're seeing, Sam Kitone, Arali, Vice White, Agambire, please send all your questions and comments to Bunyoro kitarauk@gmail.com. Then we'll be able to answer all those questions that I have not been able to read because of time. I want Omutalindwa kubaho kakeki agambireho abantu babayinibendo bazeho katayito habya bugoma orabano sobola. That's the main question I got out of this chat for today or for now. I'm sure other people will come on and ask many other questions. Then we shall continue with the series after that address or telling us something about it, if you can. If you're unable, it's fine.
No, I'm able to. I'm requesting that in Kibazo toward the end.
Okay.
All
right.
On Sabirege Ngarukamu, the 16 clans.
Yes.
Tonka Haru, and Sabe in Kozera, I'm going to correct it.
Yes.
And when I was talking about these provincial county armies, especially on the one of Koroza, which belonged to Abudongo but was commanded by a Msoga called Mika Fataki, I talked about UPDF senior officer who is related, who is a descendant of Mika Fataki. The senior officer I'm talking about is General Leopard Kyanda Bunyoro from Kigaya. This is, I think he's chief of staff of the UPDF, that's the Uganda Army.
Wow.
He's a descendant of Mika Fataki. I come from Uganda. I think these are the 16 clans that Kabaleega depended on for military, for recruitment and military operations. One, the Babito. Two, the Bahemba. Three, the Bachaki. The Bachaki are an offshoot of the Babito. Three, Bazraija. 5, Abajakwa. 6, Abagorongwa. 7, Abarebeki. 8, Abapasisa. 9, Abanywagi. 10, Abagaya. 11, Abavuoro. 12, Abatabi. 13, Abakwonga. My mother is a Mkwonga Kati. 14, Abaitwara. 15, Abajagara. And 16, Abagomba.
Wow.
The clan that Kabaleega ordered the Rukurato to remove from the list of clans of Bunyoro Kitara are not the Abaziraija. This clan was called Abahemba. So the Abahemba is the clan which was deleted from the list of clans of Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom on the orders of Kabaleega. I've told you, the professed reason was that they were dealing, they had the potential of overthrowing him since they were dealing with the Indians and Waganda without his authorization. That's the reason that the Rukurato used in the resolution as told by the Omukama. However, the real reason was to dismiss this clan, to embarrass them publicly, when he was going to use them secretly to infiltrate the armies of his enemies, especially the army of Toro and the army of Uganda. And he gave this clan, I repeat the name of the clan, Abahemba, land in Kiaka. Those of you who have traveled Fort Portal, Kiaka is after Kegegwa, somewhere in Kegegwa is Kiaka there. It is here, I think it used to be part of Kianjojo, but now it's part of Uganda. So that's the clan that Kabaleega is using. And those are the people who when they joined the Uganda army, let's talk about Uganda army, they would recruit Bunyoro soldiers who would pretend to be Uganda, but they were serving the interests of Kabaleega.
Wow.
However, the other clan, Abaziraija, They had a special role as a clan, which they performed, a special military role, that is poisoning enemies. Apart from fighting them physically, Kabaleega we would use underhand, clandestine methods of defeating the enemies by poisoning them. Those of you who remember the Battle of Barigota Isansa of Masindi, which took place in 1872, when Baker wanted to annex Bunyoro to the Equatorial province of the Khedive Ismail, and Kabaleega refused. He sent the people to go and poison Baker and his soldiers. They put poison in the beer, but Kabaleega learned of it and he never drank that beer. And few of his soldiers drank it and died. So this was the clan, the Abazraija, who carried out that mission.
Amazing.
So basically, that's what I wanted to correct.
Okay. So we are going to go on the various divisions and battalions in the Kabaleega's army.
We've done that one.
Okay.
We've done that one already. I want to talk about the army in action. I've just been giving the theoretical part,
Yes.
how the army was organized and structured, and the various roles and functions and mentioned and whatever. But now the army in action. How did the army operate? Aided by many hired war bands, the army expanded the Bunyoro for Kabaleega, whose motives were to revive the former glory of the empire, to obtain more grazing land for cattle, which was very important in the economy, and to gain control of the cattle salt depots in Toro. In 1876, Kabaleega came to power in 1870. That was 6 years later. Toro was reconquered. Rwanda, Ankole, and Karagwe were successfully raided and forced to pay tribute to recognize to accept their allegiance to Bunyoro and to recognize Bunyoro's primacy. In the north, Chope was conquered. Chope was that's Kihukia County, Chope were rebellious areas. The Babito princes who were opposed to Kamras were in Chope and Kihukia. Even when Kabaleega ascended the throne, they continued to claim that they are the rightful owner. There was Ruyonga, there was Mpuhuka, and another one. There are about three. So Kabaleega had to deal with them after conquering Toro, because he had to deal with Toro first. How could the prince declare that he's an independent kingdom? I think these princes were opposed to the king, but they had not declared their independence from Bunyoro. So that's why he attacked Toro first, and then he went to Ankole and Rwanda and the surrounding areas and forced them to accept their allegiance and pay tribute, money, food and whatever, and women and children and men to Bunyoro.
Yes.
And after that one, he turned to the north in Chope, where these people had been rebellious, and he conquered them. And he removed, in fact, he captured two of the princes. One of them he imprisoned to life sentence. Another one he sent him to Kiaka to look after, to be a herdsman of his cows. Another one, I think he sent him, there were three. Another one he sent him to Congo, Mboga, to be, I think, to stay there. And it was after Kabaleega's defeat that the British brought back these three princes as a humiliation to Bunyoro and made them prominent chiefs in the kingdom, as we shall see in the coming series. So Buganda was not itself spared. Remember, Buganda had been creeping on Bunyoro land, and even when Kabaleega came to power, 1870, Kabaka Mutesa the First, Mukabi, had tried to oppose him, but when he realized that he was a stronger candidate, a stronger
king, heir
apparent, he switched allegiance from Kabigumira and supported Kabaleega. But they still wanted to maintain the land that they had conquered. and especially in Bulemezi, where Kangaho was the chief, the southern chief of that province on behalf of Uganda. So Uganda was not spared. At the Battle of Ruengavi, Kabaleega defeated the Uganda army, estimated to be 20,000, and he enslaved very many Baganda. It is probable that Kabaleega would have expanded further under the expense of Uganda, which was ruled by Kabaka Mwanga, who had just succeeded his father in 1884, if the British had not invaded it and taken sides with Bunyoro's enemies in the late 1890s. He was proposing to attack Uganda, and this is the reason why he had shifted his tactical headquarters to Mukai in Kinogozi. But the arrival of the British thwarted these plans. So that was the army in action. But the real action was the Battle of Ruengavi.
Yes.
And that's what I'm suggesting we look at. That was the Battle of Ruengavi of January 1886. So this Battle of Ruengavi, because it is called the Battle of Ruengavi because it was fought at Ruengavi on the precincts on the surroundings of Goma Forest. But to the Baganda, it is called the Battle of Kangaho, because Kangaho, who was the commander of the Uganda army and who was the southern chief of Bulemezi, died. In fact, he was the first person to die in the war, in the battle, and he was killed by Kabaleega himself. Kabaleega fired the first shot and aimed without missing, killing Kangaho, who was the commander as well as the chief of Bulemezi. So this battle took place in January 1886. It transformed the balance of power in the region. It dealt a severe and a final blow on Uganda's pretense as a regional power. It was the heaviest defeat Uganda had ever suffered. As a result, it marked an end to serious Uganda invasions into Bunyoro. It also marked a shift in the balance of power in favor of Bunyoro. It was fought at Ruengavi on the precincts of Goma Forest, after Kabaleega had tactfully abandoned his capital at Bulera on the outskirts of Hoima. Those of you who know Hoima, you know where Bulera
Institute, I
TTC,
think. Yeah.
That institute. It's on Kwite Hill, on the southern part of Kwite Hill, along the Kampala Highway. That's where Kabaleega's palace that's where Kabaleega had moved his palace. From Momparo, he had moved to Bujumbura and then put it at Bulera. Kabaleega would shift his palaces because he was ready, he was preparing to attack Uganda and recover all the land that Uganda had taken away from Bunyoro. It was while at Bulera that a Uganda army led by Kangaho Kivirango. Kangaho is just a title of a chief of Bulemezi County in Uganda. But his real name was Kivirango. He was the southern chief of Bulemezi, invaded Bunyoro in January 1886. When Kadoma, one of Kabaleega's men, he was the intelligence officer in the region, when alerted Kabaleega of the enemy's advance, Kabaleega decided to ambush them at Bulera. He said, let them come, I'm going to ambush them here at Bulera. However, upon advice of his chiefs, he withdrew westwards to Goma Forest in order to draw the enemy into a trap. The chief had argued to Kabaleega that it would be disastrous and against the custom of Kitara for the Karuzika, that's the royal palace, to be sacked and plundered by the enemy. Indeed, whenever a king moved his capital to another area, his subjects burnt down the former palace to make sure that nothing was left behind. This was the practice in times of peace and war. And exactly that's what Kabaleega did in January 1894, when the Brits and the Baganda crossed River Kafo and began on a 3-week war approaching Mparo. Kabaleega had burnt it and moved on northwards. So Kabaleega accepted the advice and decided to fight the enemy behind the forest of Ngabi, Goma. From Wesigire, Kibirango led the invading army, estimated at 20,000 men. They marched for 6 days before reaching Ngabi. They first reached Abolera. They found that had been burned. That's we said, let's continue. And for 6 days, they marched from Abolera up to Ngabi. On the eve of the attack, that's the day before the attack, Kabaleega, armed to the teeth, inspected his forces, giving them word of encouragement. In the evening, he ordered his soldiers, the Abarosura, who were flanked by the Bwesenze. The Abarosura stood in the middle, the Bwesenze, the militias stood on the either side, on the flanks, on the eastern and western side of the flank of the Bwesenze. Drawn up in 12 lines. The Barusua were drawn up in 12 lines, protected by the militias on either side, and they waited for the enemy to come. He ordered them not to attack the enemy until he had fired the first shot, using his Remington rifle called Bagwigairebata. Bagwigairebata is a question that how dare they block my path? If this is the path, how can you block it? So that is the rifle with which he answered that question. Nobody could dare block Kabaleega's path. So that was the name that given his rifle. This rifle was capable of firing 17 shots rapidly. At cock crow, that's around 5 a.m., that's at dawn, the Baganda beat their military drums and their soldiers took up their positions, first attacking the battalions of Nyakamatura, Mugema, and Nyakabwa of Kyaka. This was a signal for Kabaleega to launch a Belize counter-attack. Kabaleega took aim and fired 3 shots at Kangaho, killing him instantly. Thereafter, Rwabudongo and Nyakamatura took charge of the front line and the fighting began in earnest. This threw the death of Kangaho threw the invading army in disarray, and they tried in vain to retreat in order to reorganize their command structure and formation. However, the fleeing Baganda put up a spirited fight, albeit a short one. When they noticed one Murusu, Kabaleega soldier, pulling by the leg the decapitated corpse of their commander Kangaho. The moment the Kabaleega shot Kangaho, one Murusura cut off his head and took it to Kabaleega, and then started pulling, another one started pulling the body, the torso of Kangaho to bring it to the camp of the Bunyoro. So the Baganda said, no, it can't happen. They fought back, got the body, and fled with it. That's what I'm talking about.
Wow, that was brutal.
After getting possession of the body, they made a tactical withdrawal. Indeed, Ideta Wabudongo, the army commander, assisted by Nyakamatura, had suggested a ceasefire, which Kabaleega rejected outright, saying, I'm quoting Kabaleega, I don't want to sleep when the enemy is still in my country. I want the country to be mine alone. To possess this country, the enemy must kill me first. This inspired the army to fight on. Shots were exchanged from both sides. In addition to Kibirango, his junior commanders, Mururuma and Mwandambi, were killed. So ferocious was the fighting that the gunshots in the battlefield could be heard in Mengo, the capital of Uganda, here in Kampala, by 11 a.m. in the morning. Pokino Temukoza, the Muganda chief, was among the many prisoners of war paraded before Kabaleega. Temukoza was ordered to fetch drinking water for Kabaleega and his commanders, while other prisoners of war prepared a meal for the victorious Barroso. The remnants of the enemy army fled as the Barosura pursued them to their camps. After a day's fighting, Kabaleega's army had succeeded in capturing the drag of Kamuswaga called Kikindo. So you see, Kamuswaga is the chief of Koki, which was originally ruled by Babito princesses, and right now they're still princes, they're still Babito, but they had allied with the Waganda to fight Bunyoro. But his drum was captured, his drum called Kikindo was captured. The battle of Wengabi or Kangaho cost many lives on both sides, although the Waganda suffered far more losses. As the remnants of the Waganda army retreated, they coined a song which went like this: if anyone has not seen guns, let him go to Bulega. Similarly, the Barusa also invented a song which went like this: the little bird which told me of it came from Bururi in the north and told me that Kangaho's body has been eaten by birds.
Akazina wakatuziniro mu Lunyoro. Omutalindwa wakatuziniro mu Lunyoro.
I don't know that tune. I don't know that tune. When I learn of it, I'll see it.
Okay.
The next series.
Right.
But when the guns had fallen silent and the smoke cleared, the Barusura heaped much praise on Kabaleega. Singa rumenya mahanga, singa rwakanyange, singa rukolimbe nyantali bamugobe, kahangirize, kabeho ebiro byona. Among others. Those are Kinyoro praise names for Kabaleega.
Amazing. You told
it
them.
It was too much a humiliation to Kabaka Mutesa. It was too much a humiliation to Kabaka Mwanga and the entire kingdom, Buganda kingdom. They would wait for the slightest opportunity to exact revenge. And this chance came 17 years later, in 1893, to be exact, when Kabaka Mwanga appointed Wakibi Omukama, that was the sector commander of the Uganda army, which allied with the British to invade Bunyoro. When the British were planning to invade Bunyoro, Kabaka Mwanga appointed one of his commanders to command the western section, that is the one which was going to attack Biaga and Ugangais. And he gave explicit orders to this commander, who was called Wakibi Mukabya, that please go and exact defense, revenge, for the humiliation, for the defeat that we suffered at Rwengabi in January 1886, when my chief and Commander Kangaho was killed. I want you to go and revenge. And he did. Wakibi Mukabya obeyed his king's orders and exacted retribution for Kangaho's death. Zealously, the latter obeyed the Kabaka's orders and launched a scorched earth policy that left Ugangais desolate and depopulated. Sabalangira, that is the Okwiri of Uganda, the head of the royal clan. Sabalangira, JTK Gotomoka, who died in 1944, that's 20 years after Kabaleega's death, who was the Kaima. Kaima is the Southern Chief of Maokota County in Uganda, offers us a glimpse into the massacre of the Bunyoro at the hands of the Uganda army led by Wakibi Mukabya. As the Kiimba, that is the Southern Chief of Ugangais, when Ugangais was conquered, they appointed their chief, they appointed him, Gotomoka, as the Kiimba, or the Southern Chief of Ugangais, and he wrote.
So it is this during this
incident.
Omutalindwa. So is this during this battle that we lost Bugangaizi? Is this during this time?
Yes, that was when the British invaded together with their Baganda allies.
Okay.
But for them, the Baganda, they wanted to exact revenge for what had happened to them in January 1886 when Kangaho died, and they lost many of their soldiers, 15,000 soldiers. So I'm going to point out two incidents which Gotomoka points out in his writing. These involve the killing of 90 people, including women and children, at Kiruruma Cave at Inkoko in Ugangais, where they had taken refuge. When the Bunyoro heard that the Baganda were coming, they ran and hid in a cave, in many caves, by the way. But one of the caves was called Kiruruma. It is at Inkoko in Ugangais. And this is what Omuka said, I quote, when Mukabe was told that many people, together with their belongings, had taken refuge in those caves, he gave orders for the rocks to be heated by fire, thinking that it would get the refugees out together with their booty. This is, I'm quoting the Uganda Journal of March 1950, page 89, and the article in that journal is called The History and Legend of the Rocks of Kakumiro and Some Other Places in the Sazas of Muvende, written by Gotomoka, but it was just translated because wrote in Uganda, one Muzungu called Rexo translated it into English, and it ran in the Uganda Journal of March 1951. If you can access it, I accessed it online this last week. You can read more about it.
1951, page 50.
March, the Uganda Journal, volume 14, number 1. The Uganda Journal, volume 14, number 1, of March 1950, page 89.
Okay.
So that was the first incident, killing of 90 people. The second incident, the massacre of 300 Bunyoro at Kabanova Cave, also in Nkoko. About this incident, Kotomoka says that when Wakibi learned of this hideout, he lit a bonfire at the entrance of the cave. Unknown to him, the people inside drew water from the subterranean river in the cave, with which they put out the fire. So in the cave, there was a river flowing. So the people there tried to use the fire. They would scoop the fire and come and pour it scoop the water and come and pour it on the fire, which worked for some days. But this was a siege. They ran out of food, they ran out of supplies, the people started dying, and they came out. 300 of them were killed at this cave on that day by this man. So Gotomoka adds 300 people within the cave were killed and all their possessions were destroyed. It is said that in the interior, some spears of murdered people are still to be found, and that others at Kidongodongo, where they were left. Same page. So I think as a kingdom, we should try and go and find out what still remains in this case. Are the spears still there? We could put them in our museum and maybe hold days of remembrance for the lost souls. So you remember, see, these are the two incidents in two neighboring caves. What happened to the many caves in Buyaga and Bugangais? How many Bunyoro were killed?
Many.
The number estimated from a source, another source, is that 200,000 Bunyoro were killed by the Waganda in Bugangais alone.
Wow. Wow.
In this article, Gotomoka wrote about 12 caves found in Bugangais, but he mentioned only two incidents on two caves. The caves that he mentions are Mizimu, Semwema, Kisana, Kabanova, Kiruruma, Gamugore, Kibingo, which is also known as Nyamuhabura, Buanswa, Mirambi, Buhingiro, Nyabiroko, Nyamamba, Kiahangi, Kidandaire, not to forget Omuta Kateboha, or the trenches of Kateboha. However, he's cagey about the massacres that might have taken place there.
Wow.
Atenyi, that's the Battle of Kangaho, or Wengabi, and its aftermath, both on Bunyoro and Buganda. Not forget that we are going to realize that after realizing, because Kabaleega had warned Mwanga, that you think for you on the safe side, send away those visitors, if you use called about the Zungu visitors. Bring everything in the They have overstayed, they have come for one purpose, to take our land and our kingdoms. Mwanga thought was on the safe side. Even prevented two peace envoys from Kabaleega from meeting Lugard and Gerard Poto. And in 1897, what happens? Mwanga has been defeated. He runs away through Bugangaizi and Biaga. He joins, he comes to Bugoma, and then Wabdongo spirits him out through Budongo up to Lango, where he meets Kabaleega. Kabaleega still, what brings you here? I told you in advance. Now you see we're in a precarious situation. But of course the chiefs told Kabaleega, forget the past, forgive him, he's a young man, let's fight for our survival. But in the end, as we shall see, on the 9th of April, 1899, they were both captured and taken to Kizar. So that's the sad story of our king. I think now I can answer the question of Bugoma.
Yeah, Omutalindwa, sorry, otakagarukiremu ekaguzo kya Bugoma. We just want, me as a host of the show, I am so overwhelmed and I feel so bad by all the people that you've told us, the Bunyoro and the Baganda, for getting know whatever our divisions are that died in this battle. As you have already told us about this prayer, I just want us to have a silence, a minute, and remember these people who were taken and who died at this battle in such a bad way. Some died of course nkobotugambire bakafera omukeivu bakaba batalina byokulya. I bet kids were there. So many people lost their lives. I just want us ask you, Omutalindwa olukurato lwa Bunyoro, obemu akasaara kake ak'okutugambiraho ok'okusaba twijjuka abantu bano abafiire omu bbatta eno.
Let's observe a minute silence in memory of the. By the way, these Bunyoro who died in this cave did not die of hunger and the famine. They were just killed. They were just massacred by this Wakabi, Mokabia, and his army, as they had been detailed by Kabaka Mwanga to exact revenge for the humiliation that the Baganda experienced at Ruengabi, or the Battle of Kangaho, as they call it. So let's observe a minute silence. And as for the prayer, I think we shall repeat our Bunyoro national prayer at the end of the program.
Okay.
May the soul of the deceased rest in eternal peace.
Amen. With that silence in memory of the people who were killed in this battle that we have just been told about, we are going to ask Omutalindwa garukemu ekaguzo kya Bugoma mulinga atugambire na Kabaleega karabayo, Omukama Kabaleega akabayo okwo enyuma okwo yarabayo ati atugambire about this Bugoma, as people want you to address it wenko Omutalindwa olukurato lwa Bunyoro speaker obabeho obugambo bukobe okubagambira what is where we are and what is happening. Just a little bit, not a lot, because this show is not for Bugoma. This show is about the series of Omukama Kabaleega. Otyo muno Omutalindwa waitu tugambireho what is going on with Bugoma.
The issue of Bugoma is the issue of Bugoma is a dicey and sad one. Of course, as Bunyoro, we are traditionally environmentalists, protecting our environmental resources, forests, wildlife, among others. We are the custodian. For me, I belong to the Babiasi clan, who are the custodians of the Bugoma forest. And that one of our roles as the Babiasi clan was to protect this area as rulers, because we are an offshoot of the Bachwezi clan, and we stayed behind, and that's why the kings, right from, in fact, even before the coming of the Bachwezi, the Babiasi called the Insinga Kanyabugoma was the chief of this area, all the way to Mboga Zayu and Bugoma Kyangwali. This is a territory of the Diaspora. That is our fatherland. That's where we come from. And what is happening is the third one. As a kingdom, we would like to protect our natural resources. However, the land in question is not part of Goma Forest. It's a cultural area where the king used to go and perform rituals. It is 21 square kilometers, which the kingdom leased for him as sugar. Of course, the leasing maybe is regrettable. We don't want to grow sugar. Most people don't want to grow sugar in Bunyoro, especially in Bugoma, to cut down. Whether it is a forest or not, we shouldn't cut it down. And we can use it, we can use alternative land use, preferably growing grain, crops like rice, or putting it to other uses like tourism, carbon conservation, among others, not to grow sugar cane. And we are trying to see, as a kingdom, we are trying to find out the best way of solving this problem. But what is important to note is that the area in contention is not part of Goma Forest. It is part of Bunyoro. It is part of the kingdom, where the king used to go and perform rituals. It is adjacent to the Goma Forest, but it's not part of Goma Forest. But all the same, the previous regime is the one who leased this land. It is not sold. It was not sold, but it was leased to Hoima Sugar for 99 years. One of the proposals is to settle this issue out of court and see if we can get an alternative land to give to Goma, to Hoima Sugar Company, and not use it for sugar, but to see if they can use it for another economic activity. Basically, that's what I can say. So please, there's a lot of misinformation, especially in the social media, but we need to exercise our calm and see how best we are going to solve this problem. But at the heart of it all, we should know that Bunyoro, we are civilized and we are civilized and refined nation. We are not after destroying our environment. No forest was destroyed during Kabaleega's reign, and we should maintain that legacy. We play that song of Ekirale, which is meaning a legacy. Let's work for posterity, for the future of our children, not for our own selfish ends. Because for us, we are individuals, we are going to go. If Kabaleega had been selfish, and just wanted to amass wealth and power, we're not really talking about him as a hero. But for him, he loved Bunyoro, he loved this nation, he loved his people, he worked for them selflessly up the point of death. By God's grace, he was not killed by a bullet, but he lived to the biblical age of exactly 70, despite the circumstances of his death. But he lived a fruitful life. Can we as Bunyoro, Ugandans and Africans, emulate him and work for posterity and leave a legacy, as that song was challenging us? Ekirale kiawe kiraha. What is your legacy? What would you like to be remembered for when you are long gone?
Amazing. Omutalindwa waitu orukurato rwa Bunyoro kitara webale muno tuhamu enlighten us on about the issue of Bugoma. I'm sure many people have heard, and those who haven't heard will be told what you have kind of said. I know the topic is big, and many people are angry and they want to know more than what you have told them today. But of course, as I said, today is not the day for that topic, so we will be addressing it in another time or another day, or we'll have a topic on it, and then people can come and talk and discuss and tell us the way forward and what we should do. But webale muno kutugambiraho ebyo byotugambireho hati anaroho aba viewers baitu abakaguza you at the stage ono niwo Omukyala Judith Bigirwa Kisemba Moti agamba she's one of our long-serving members of Bunyoro Kitara Development Association committee member kozera omulimu mukoto mu Bunyoro Kitara kandi na hataki akora hati akaguza at what stage did the king's army start rebelling when he had to get soldiers from neighboring kingdoms. Obwire bujja kuba buke ogaruke mu kwaguza obuno bikaika bogatrai kuruga ha line kyonka ogaruke mu one of 2 or 3 questions that I am going to read for you. One of them is that from Amoti Judith. Omukulu Stephen at work. Yes? I beg your pardon?
Should I answer it now?
Yes, you can.
Should I answer that question now?
Yes, you can,
Why don't
Omutalindwa.
you read the 3 questions so that I can?
Okay.
I think I would suggest that you tell me the 3 questions, then I will answer them at a go.
Okay. Omukulu Stephen Atwoki always kusiima Omutalindwa Kalembe Akiiki webale muno. The presenter Karatenyi naye webale muno. In your opinion, are we Bunyoro expecting the return of Kabaleega just like Christians believe in the return of Christ to save us? This is a very interesting question.
Okay.
Did you hear the question, Omutalindwa?
Can I answer them?
Uh,
Yes, I did.
Okay. Then I'm seeing awareness of climate change and stand against the deforestation. That is about, you've addressed that. Amazing. Yeah, garuka mwez those 2 questions. As if we still have time, I'll read the 3rd one, but most likely we may not have time for another question. Or garuka mwez is those 2 that I've asked, and then we will probably go off air because it's 8:30, and that is.
I will begin with this. I will begin with this last. Kabaleega is not Christ, Jesus Christ. Kabaleega existed and passed on, but he still lives because he was a hero. He left a legacy. He left a very big challenge. I remember in the 1st or 2nd series, I described him as a phenomenon. He was like a shooting star that lights the sky and then disappears. He ruled for only 28 years, but what he did in those 28 years was unimaginable, as we shall see. What do we expect of Kabaleega? We don't expect him to come back. But the challenge is, can we emulate him? I think toward the end of this series, we are going to look at, the last session should be about what lessons have we learned from Kabaleega.
And how are we going to implement them?
As a history and political science scholar, we are told that a hero lasts 100 years. The legacy of a hero lasts 100 years. That when a hero dies, it will take 100 years plus for a successor or a replacement. I always point out Mandela. South Africa produced Mandela, a hero. He passed on 2-3 years ago. A few years ago, it will take them 100 years to get another Mandela. It could be by a different name. Kabaleega died in 1923. It has taken us 100 years, but now 100 years have passed. The question is, who is to replace Kabaleega as a hero? Who is the hero? Who is the next Bunyoro hero?
We are still looking. That is the question.
Remains unanswered.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how we can answer that one. Let's not look at Kabaleega as someone who's going to resurrect and come back.
No.
How can we get, can we be like a phoenix? That phoenix bird, that mysterious bird in the east, phoenix, which dies and rises from its ashes. Can we rise from the ashes of Kabaleega and make Bunyoro great again? This American president, Trump, said make Bunyoro great again. I mean, make America great again. Can we make Bunyoro great again? My proposal is, let's use soft power. We are not going to use military force. There are very many Banyoro scattered all over in Uganda. In talk of the lost counties, talk of those parts, the parts that were given by way to other areas and the kingdom. But the people remained Banyoro.
We had the Bahumas. We have the Bahumas last week.
Last Sunday we had the Bahuma.
Yes.
They are Bunyoro in the diaspora. Yeah, 300,000. That's my answer. At what stage the Barusura rebel against Kabaleega? At no point did any Murusura rebel against Kabaleega. There were disagreements right from the war council when they sat, deciding when the British had invaded. There was a war council who sat at Iparo to decide whether Bunyoro should fight or Bunyoro should surrender. Kabaleega decided to fight him, despite some contrary views by some members of the Army Council. When the British, after the Battle of Wempindu, when the British forced Kabaleega into Dongo Forest, because Kabaleega at any one point was moving with an army of 350,000 during the invasion. He had a column of 350,000. At one point, Major MacDonald complained that Kabaleega is hard to get. He walks fast. He walks so fast. He's unlike other kings who are carried. He walks, and he's protected. He's heavily protected. When he reached Budongo, he realized that now they had to make a decision. He was not going to allow his Barusura to die mercilessly because they had been outnumbered. They were outgunned. He told Budongo, rather, go back and seek peace with the British in Hoima. You are going to, I don't want to leave my people, the Bunyoro, as orphans. He appointed him as Omusigire, caretaker. And he went and stood for peace with the British and was made caretaker. In fact, the British had tricked him. They wanted him to sit on Kabaleega's seat in the palace. He refused. He said, "For I'm not a king. I can't go against my king." He put his stool beside Kabaleega's chair. So, but no Bunyoro ever betrayed. I think there's only one incident. A chief called Amanya in Masindi, who betrayed Kabaleega, and he died mysteriously. The British thought that he had been poisoned. Others say it was Kabaleega's powers, the kingly powers, that furnished Amanya. Even when Kabaleega was captured on the 11th of April, 1899, the Barusura, those who fled, some of course settled in Pader, and they named that area Chwa because they wanted to remember him. But one of his wives, called Ihembe, as we shall see, went on with the fighting. For 4 months, he commanded the Barusura in Lango and Bukidi until she was herself captured. Even when Kabaleega was shot in the right arm, brought to Mengo where he was, where his right arm was cut off, the Barusura Rescue Commando Unit, elite unit, tried to rescue him. They came to Mengo, and the British realized it in advance. They had to take Kabaleega before even he could be cured, could be healed. And they took them to Mwanga because Mwanga was supposed to be taken to Kiko to be humiliated, to see his son, 3-year-old son, sitting at the Kawaka, and the Kiko was sitting, and that he should give them a farewell address, which never happened. They were marched to Busabala, put on a boat, a steamer, and then taken to Kisumu and then to Nairobi. The Barusura walked all the way from Uganda. It took them almost a year until they reached Nairobi, where he had been imprisoned, and tried to rescue him. The British learned of the plot. They took away the prisoners to Kisimayu on the Somali border. The Barusura also walked all the way from Nairobi. They are not working in the open because these are trained commandos. They were on a rescue mission. They walked all the way to Kisimayu. When the British learned of the plot, that's when they put them on a ship and took them to exile in Sissy's Island. And those Barusura had vowed never to come back without Kabaleega. They settled in Mombasa and other areas. They never came back. So when I talk of Bunyoro as a nation, Bunyoro and diaspora, There are very many Bunyoro settled in Mombasa, settled in Nairobi, everywhere. So there is no Bunyoro who betrayed Kabaleega. When we examine the other reforms, like the social reforms, Kabaleega united the nation.
Okay.
He sealed a blood pact, Omukama, that's a blood pact, with each and every clan. And he married a wife from each clan. So the point of betrayal, whether by the Ahmed Abarosura or by the Basi Bunyoro, did not rise at all. That's why the Bunyoro mourned, and these are some of the Bunyoro still mourn for their loss and death.
Webale muno Omutalindwa agarukamu ebikaguzo ebyo.
Can we leave the legacy?
Yes, we are not going to have time.
Can we leave the legacy? Can we emulate Kabaleega and leave a legacy?
Yes, we will try our best, and we are all working towards that. Omutalindwa tujakora. Happy with those few comments and questions that you have been able to answer. Thank you so much. There are so many questions. Omutalindwa waitu nkusaba ogendeho omuchati yaitu muno. So many questions that I have not been able to read out, that really needs your comments, your response. People want to know, want to hear these answers from you. Nkusaba Akiiki osobole garuka obutulamara sheno oba today oba tomorrow ogenda omuchati ogarukemu abantu banu bone ebikaguzo byawe bakaguize rero bibaire bizibu timsoboire kubisoma byona kandi nobwire nabo butukwasire. We are actually out of time, and we are not going. I don't think we are going to be able to say esara yaitu habwokuba obwire butulekere.
Let's do it. Let's do 1 minute. 1 minute.
Ninyenda kusima.
I'm going to just.
Ninyenda kusima muno.
I'm going to say the English version. 1 minute.
Ninyenda kusima muno kwikiriza kuba back again on this show. Kuongera kutugambiraho part 4 of the series of Omukama Kabaleega, na habwekyo nituija kuba nitutandika shows zaitu ezikuruga this week. Our shows will be beginning at 6:30 because of the time change here in the UK. We don't want our people back home to sleep too late because of being on the show quite late. We are now going to be 3 hours behind. So show yaite jaga kuba netandika 6:30 until 8:30. Hati Omutalindwa ni asabire tusaba akasara kanu just only English Omutalindwa bukobwire butugenzereho. But I want to appreciate all our viewers and listeners and the audience, as Omutalindwa calls us or calls you the audience. Mwebale muno kutuninga hairaka lya Bunyoro Diaspora here in the UK. TGM Radio, that is sponsored by Bunyoro Development Association. We will be back next week, 6:30 sharp, with the Bunyoro we want. Being our first week, we will be having the first week of this of the month, Sunday of the month. We will be having the Bunyoro we want by Mr. Birija. So please stay tuned on. Sign in at 6:30 sharp. And ninyenda kusaba Omutalindwa ahe esara yaitu, then ninja kuba nimbaraga, and we will see you again next Sunday, same 6:30. And please have a lovely week ahead of you. Mukama inywena abalinde. Nitumaliriza esara nituija kuba ntugenda off air. Otyo muno Omutalindwa katusabe.
Here we go. O God of heaven, who bestows sunshine and enjoyed by everyone, creator of pillars, heaven and earth, creator of human beings and animals, vegetation, birds and insects, mountains and valleys, rivers and seas. Grand Almighty, our omni-provider, we thank you for your providence, sunshine and rain, food and fecundity that you give us. O giver, who provides to everyone, grant us genuine wealth. God, the universal Son, we entreat you to protect and engender our children with good health. Almighty God, we implore you to destroy machinations of the diabolic. We beseech you to block the path of diseases and death and all sorts of witchcraft, sorcery and demons. Protect us from famine, destructive winds, hailstorms, waves, floods, earthquakes, and man-eating wild animals. Lastly, God of plenty, shower blessings upon us. Give us good health and longevity, like accumulate grain and like legumes that grow bad so easily. Amen. Last question, what is your legacy? What would you like to be remembered for when you are long gone? Good night.
Musomesa komba kagen, omubanda Omukama marumbire. Izepyo musomesa komba kagen, a headline entertainment in this. Izepyo musomesa marumbire, omubanda Omukama marumbire. Diaspora, my joyous. Abanyoro nyakaitu, tubeno kwa Bunyoro, tubeno kwa Bunyoro. Wala la la lo mutima kwa Bunyoro, mutima kwa Bunyoro. Mutima kwa Bunyoro, weno kwa Bunyoro, mutima kwa Bunyoro. Wala la la lo mutima kwa Bunyoro, kukurumirwa Bunyoro. Mutima kwa Bunyoro, anga kutero muranga kwa Bunyoro na Banyoro abali mu Bunyoro. Omanyire ihanga Ruganda, bakwataniza bange tubekimu. Kobe muganda mucholi mururu murugwara kimu oli mu Bunyoro. Wala la 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 bantu bange nyowe kiniremu. Ay 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 Abanyoro nyakaitu kiniremu. Wala la 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 kine kiroto kalero kiniremu. Wala la 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 bantu bange mumba matwinywe. Wala la 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 ali hatifi amaisho harutimbe. Ate visipuro kwa tengoma izepyo musomesa leka nsomese. Ate visipuro konko nebidongo izepyo nsomesa bantu bange. Tubeno kwa Bunyoro, tubeno kwa Bunyoro. Wala la la lo mutima kwa Bunyoro, mutima kwa Bunyoro. Mutima kwa Bunyoro, weno kwa Bunyoro, mutima kwa Bunyoro. Wala la la lo mutima kwa Bunyoro, kukurumirwa Bunyoro. Mutima kwa Bunyoro. Omukama Kabaleega ndumbirege, uyitumbirya lero ntinirege. Akugamba halali kasemereirwe, Abanyoro bya Bunyoro tubinagirize. Wala la 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 la. Ye le 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 le. Bambi tugonze hangalya tubunyoro, garuke tukolere munuka Bunyoro. Musike ni mugaruro waitu munuka, tukaika haze hangalya tubunyoro. Leka bana baitu batali baseka, bakabaka kuzabanyu bakabantaha. Ay 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 ay. Wala la 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 la. Ikutaiwe nyenga harukugenda, baitu kandi Bunyoro ikirekaho. Nomwana wamwe alikisanga, ichugurubu alikisanga. Balereka tubena kulo mutima, okwa Kabaleega senkuru itwe. Omukama Kabaleega gambire, omukiroto nyawe ntinirege. Agambire tubeno kwa Bunyoro, tubeno kwa Bunyoro. Wala la la lo mutima kwa Bunyoro, mutima kwa Bunyoro. Mutima kwa Bunyoro, weno kwa Bunyoro, mutima kwa Bunyoro. Wala la la lo mutima kwa Bunyoro, kukurumirwa Bunyoro. Mutima kwa Bunyoro. Muranga kutera muranga. Ay 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 ay. Amanyilanda ni mame.
Diaspora on TGN Radio. Mwebale muno kuita kuwuliriza eiraka lya Bunyoro kuruga mu Diaspora on TGN Radio.
PrEP protects. PrEP is a pill that keeps you HIV negative if taken before and after sex. It gives you up to 100% protection when taken as recommended. It can be taken by both men and women. PrEP is free on the NHS. To find out more about PrEP, visit startswithme.org.uk.